My name is Megan Sullivan. I'm 29 years old, and 6 months ago, the man I was supposed to marry told me he was in love with the woman I paid to clean our home. Daniel packed one suitcase and left that night to move in with her. But before he walked out, he had already done something I wouldn't discover until later. He had taken the wedding bracelet my mother gave me, the one my grandmother wore before her, and sold it to a pawn shop without telling me. And somehow, that still wasn't the worst thing he had done. 6 months later, at 6:17 on a freezing Tuesday morning, someone started pounding on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Daniel standing there in the same gray coat he wore the night he left me. Except now the coat was stained. His face looked hollow, and there was a duffel bag at his feet. When I opened the door 2 inches, he looked at me and said, "Megan, please, I have nowhere else to go." He had lost the woman he left me for. He had lost his job. He was drowning in debt. And he thought the woman whose wedding money he had taken, and whose family bracelet he had sold, was going to rescue him one more time. But Daniel didn't know something. By the time he came begging at my door, I had already discovered another account with my name on it, an account I had never opened, and more than $11,000 had already been charged to it. Before I tell you how the man I was supposed to marry went from secretly building a new life with my maid to begging outside mine, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Because to understand why I didn't open that door, I need to take you back 6 months, back to when I still thought the biggest problem in my relationship was planning our wedding. Daniel and I had been together 4 years, engaged for 11 months. Our wedding was supposed to be in October at a small brick venue near Lake Erie, 80 guests, nothing extravagant. I finished high school, started working at 19, and by 29 had a stable job at a regional insurance office downtown. I organized calendars, fixed travel disasters, and remembered deadlines nobody else remembered. I was good at solving problems. That was probably why Daniel liked being with me. He worked in sales for a commercial flooring company. Charming, quick, good with names. Everybody liked him. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, once told me, "That one knows how to smile at old ladies. Dangerous skill." I laughed then. The first problem was money. Daniel wasn't broke, but he was always almost caught up. Almost done paying a credit card. Almost about to get a big commission. Almost ready to put more into the wedding account. My income was steadier, so I handled most of the deposits and a larger share of the household bills. "Once this quarter closes, I'll make it up," he would say. Then the quarter would close, and something else would come up. Car repair, client dinner, weekend trip. I noticed. I just kept fixing it. Then, 8 months before the wedding, I hired Camilla. A woman from my office recommended the cleaning service she used. Camila Reyes was 26, quiet, efficient, and always early. At first, she came every other Thursday for 2 hours. Kitchen, bathrooms, floors. She wore her dark hair in a low ponytail and had a habit of arranging everything on the bathroom counter into perfect little rows. The first time Daniel met her, he came home while she was finishing the kitchen. He looked around and said, "Wow, we've been living like animals." Camilla laughed. I laughed too. Nothing about it felt important. That's the thing about betrayal. The first clue usually looks harmless. 3 weeks later, Daniel suggested we hire her weekly. "Wedding planning is killing you," he said. "You work all day, then come home and do everything here. Let us buy back some of your time." Let us. I remember that phrase because he made it sound like we were a team. I agreed. A few weeks later, our office network went down and I came home early. Daniel's car was outside. That was unusual. He was supposed to be across town meeting a contractor. I opened the front door and heard voices in the kitchen. Daniel was leaning against the counter with a coffee mug. Camilla was sitting at the table. Her cleaning gloves were beside her, still wet. They both looked up at the same time. Daniel smiled first. "Hey, surprise. Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, my meeting got canceled." Camilla was taking a break. Camilla stood immediately. "I was just finishing. There was nothing to accuse anyone of, so I didn't." But upstairs, while changing clothes, I noticed one detail. Daniel had made 2 coffees. He never made coffee for me, not once in 4 years. He always said mine was too complicated because I used oat milk and cinnamon. Camilla drank hers black. I stood in the bedroom with my office badge still around my neck and told myself not to be ridiculous. 2 people were drinking coffee. That was all. A month later, my wedding shoes disappeared. My mother had bought them for me. Ivory satin, low heel. I kept them boxed on the top shelf of our bedroom closet. One Saturday, the box was empty. I searched. Daniel barely looked up from his phone. Maybe Camilla moved them while cleaning. When Camilla came Monday, I asked her. She went pale. "No, I never touched the boxes up there." Then she paused. "Maybe Daniel moved them." That was the first time either of them used the other as an explanation. I found the shoes 2 days later in the trunk of Daniel's car. He said he had taken them to match the color for a surprise wedding gift. "What gift?" He smiled and kissed my forehead. Then it wouldn't be a surprise. I wanted to believe him. So I did. For 3 more weeks. Then I found the hotel charge. I was checking our wedding account. During lunch, when I saw $286 charged to a boutique hotel in Sandusky, Daniel and I shared one credit card for wedding expenses. I texted him, "Did you book something for the wedding?" He replied 2 minutes later, "Client meeting, used wrong card. I'll transfer it back." Reasonable. Except he never transferred it back. That night, I checked the work calendar he had asked me months earlier to help organize. The date of the hotel charge was blank. No client, no meeting, nothing. I searched his email for the hotel name. One result. A reservation confirmation. One night. King room. 2 guests. Made at 11:42 p.m. on a Wednesday, while I had been asleep beside him. There was no second guest name, but there was a note on the reservation. Late arrival. Anniversary package requested. Daniel and I had no anniversary in April. I printed the email the next morning. Maybe because paper stays still when your life doesn't. I folded it into quarters and kept it in my purse. For 4 days, I said nothing. I watched. And once I started watching, I saw how often Camilla's schedule had changed. Thursdays became Wednesdays, sometimes Tuesdays, almost always on evenings when I worked late. Always arranged directly with Daniel. He said it was okay. Camilla told me once when I came home and found her there unexpectedly. I looked at Daniel. He didn't look at me. He looked at her. Only for a second. But it was enough. Have you ever had a moment where your body accepts the truth before your mind is ready to say it? That was mine. If you have, tell me in the comments. Because I didn't confront them. I went to work the next morning and changed one thing. I called the wedding venue. I asked what would happen if I canceled before the final payment deadline. The coordinator explained the deposit terms, then asked, "Megan, is everything okay?" I looked through the conference room glass at my desk, my calendar, my ordinary life. I don't know yet. That afternoon, Daniel texted that he was working late. At 5:26, Camilla texted too. She said she felt sick and needed to move Thursday's cleaning to Friday. 2 messages, 4 minutes apart. Then I opened the location app connected to the old tablet in Daniel's car. He had forgotten it was still signed into our shared account. His location wasn't at his office. It wasn't at a client site. It was moving east toward the lake. At 6:03 p.m., it stopped. At the same hotel in Sandusky. The hotel from the charge. The hotel with the anniversary package. I sat at my desk while everyone else went home. I didn't cry. Not yet. I took the printed reservation out of my purse and placed it beside my phone. Then I called my mother. "Can I stay with you tonight?" She didn't ask why. She just said yes. At 7:14, I left work. But I didn't drive to my mother's house. Not immediately. I went home first. I parked half a block away, went inside, and packed one suitcase. Only mine. Then I opened the drawer where we kept the wedding documents. Venue contract, photographer agreement, catering estimate, guest list. And underneath all of it was an envelope I had never seen before. My name was written on the front. Not in Daniel's handwriting, in Camilla's. I stood there for nearly a minute before opening it. Inside was a pawn shop receipt. For my mother's wedding bracelet. The bracelet I thought I had lost 2 months earlier. And the seller's name printed at the bottom was Daniel Harper. That was the moment the affair stopped being the only thing I was afraid of. I stared at Daniel's name on the pawn receipt until the letters stopped looking like a name. My mother's bracelet. She had given it to me the night Daniel proposed. It wasn't expensive enough to change anyone's life. Maybe $1,200 on a good day. But it had belonged to my grandmother before it belonged to my mother, and Mom had worn it at her own wedding. 2 months earlier, I had torn the bedroom apart looking for it. Daniel had helped. That part still makes me sick when I remember it. He checked under the bed. He emptied drawers. He even suggested calling the restaurant where we'd had dinner the weekend before. "You probably took it off in the bathroom," he'd said. Now I was holding proof that he had sold it. But why was the receipt inside an envelope with my name written in Camilla's handwriting? I photographed everything. The receipt, the envelope, the drawer where I found it. Then I put the original in my purse. I didn't call Daniel. I called the pawn shop. A man answered on the fourth ring. I gave him the transaction number and explained that the bracelet might have been sold without the owner's permission. His voice changed immediately. He couldn't give me much information over the phone, but he confirmed the transaction date. March 18th. I remembered March 18th. Daniel had taken me to dinner that night. Not somewhere fancy. A neighborhood Italian restaurant we liked. He had ordered tiramisu and toasted to our last year as unmarried people. He had already sold my bracelet that afternoon. I thanked the man and hung up. Then I looked at the envelope again. Camilla knew. Maybe she had known for weeks. Maybe she had been trying to tell me. Or maybe the receipt was there because she wanted me to find it. I didn't know which possibility was worse. I drove to my mother's house. Mom opened the door in sweatpants and slippers and knew something was wrong before I said a word. "Daniel?" I nodded. She didn't ask another question until we were sitting at her kitchen table. I showed her the hotel reservation first, then the receipt. She picked it up carefully. Her expression changed. Not because of the money, because she recognized the date. "That bracelet was yours?" "I know." "No, Megan, I mean legally. I gave it to you." "I know." "He stole it." Hearing my mother use that word made everything real. Affair, lies, theft. I had spent 4 days wondering whether I was being paranoid about another woman, while Daniel had apparently been taking things from our home. Mom pushed the receipt back toward me. "Do not go home alone tonight." I stayed with her. At 10:38, Daniel called. I watched his name flash across my screen. I didn't answer. He called again. Then a text. "Where are you?" Another. "Meg?" Then, "I'm home. Your suitcase is gone. What's happening?" I almost laughed. He wanted me to explain what was happening. I turned my phone face down. At 11:06, Camilla called. That one I answered. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then she said, "You found it." Not hello. Not Megan. "You found it." "The receipt?" "Yes." "Why was it in my drawer?" Her breathing changed. I couldn't tell you. You could have. No, I mean I tried. Camilla, where are you? Silence. Then I heard a car door close somewhere on her end. I'm sorry. For what? Another silence. Longer. For more than you know. The call ended. I called back. Straight to voicemail. That sentence kept me awake until nearly 3 in the morning. For more than you know. The next day, I called in sick for the first time in almost 2 years. At 8:20, Daniel showed up at my mother's house. Mom saw him through the window. You stay here. No. I stood. I need to hear what he says. Daniel looked exhausted when I opened the door. Same shirt as the day before, hair uncombed, eyes red. Megan, what is going on? I held up the hotel reservation. His face answered before his mouth did. He looked down, then back at me. I can explain. Of course he could. People always have explanations once you have evidence. Who was with you? Megan. Who? He rubbed both hands over his face. Camilla. There it was. One word. 4 years reduced to one word. I thought I would scream. Instead, I asked, how long? Not long. How long? A few months. How many? He looked confused. How many months, Daniel? 3. Maybe 4. Maybe. As though betrayal was something you could misplace on a calendar. My mother was behind me, completely silent. Are you in love with her? He hesitated. That hurt more than yes would have. Megan, things between us haven't been good for a while. I actually turned around because I thought he might be talking to someone else. Things between us? You've been stressed about the wedding. You're always working. Everything became schedules and payments and lists. We were planning a wedding. I know. You asked me to marry you. I know. And while I was making lists for our wedding, you were taking my maid to hotels. He flinched at the word maid. She's not just a maid. I remember the silence after that sentence. Even my mother inhaled. I looked at him. What did you say? Camilla is a person, Megan. I know she's a person. That's not what I meant. No. I know exactly what you meant. Suddenly, Daniel wasn't apologizing. He was defending her. And that told me everything I needed to know. I reached into my purse and pulled out the pawn receipt. His expression changed again. This time there was no confusion, only fear. Where did you get that? In our bedroom. He stared at it. Camilla. Not a question, I noticed. You sold my bracelet. I was going to replace it. With what? Another bracelet that belonged to my grandmother? I needed cash. For what? He looked away. Daniel? The wedding. That answer was so absurd I almost admired it. You stole my bracelet to pay for our wedding while sleeping with another woman? It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. He couldn't. So I asked the question that had started forming in my mind the night before. How much do you owe? His eyes came back to mine. And there it was. The real fear. Not, Camilla, not losing me. Money. How much? About 18? 1800? Silence. Daniel? 1,000. My mother whispered something behind me. I barely heard it. $18,000, credit cards, a personal loan, cash advances. He had been covering one payment with another for almost a year. The commissions he kept saying were coming? Smaller than he claimed. The client dinners? Some were real. Some weren't. The money I thought he was contributing to the wedding? Borrowed. And the hotel? Paid with our shared wedding card because his own cards were nearly maxed out. I felt something inside me shift. The affair had broken my heart. The money showed me I didn't know the man standing in front of me. How much of the wedding account did you take? He froze. That was my second answer. I pulled out my phone. Our wedding savings account had contained $1,440 3 days earlier. I opened the banking app. Balance: $9,240. $5,600 was gone, transferred at 7:51 the previous night, while Daniel was supposedly at the hotel with Camilla. I held the screen toward him. Where is it? I can put it back. Where is my money? I needed to take care of something. What? His jaw tightened. Megan, please. What? Camilla needed help. My mother stepped forward. I put one hand up. I needed him to finish. What kind of help? She was behind on rent. I stared at him. You took $5,600 from our wedding account for her? It wasn't all for rent. What else? She had debts? I laughed then. I couldn't help it. Not because anything was funny. Because the man with $18,000 in hidden debt had stolen from his fiancé to rescue his mistress from debt. You cannot invent symmetry like that. I looked at him, and something in my chest finally went quiet. You need to leave. Megan, wait. We're done. His face changed. Maybe he had expected anger, maybe tears, maybe negotiation. He had not expected those two words. We're done. You don't mean that. I do. 4 years, Megan. You remembered the 4 years today? That's not fair. Neither was selling my mother's bracelet. He started crying, and I wish I could tell you I felt nothing. I didn't. Part of me wanted to reach for him because for 4 years, when Daniel hurt, I comforted him. Habit is cruel that way. I kept my hands at my sides. He asked for one more chance. I said no. He asked me to postpone the wedding instead of canceling it. I said no. Then he said the sentence that made the decision permanent. If you make me choose right now, I'm going to her. I stared at him. He wiped his face. My mother looked at the floor, and I realized Daniel still thought he had leverage. He thought the threat of choosing Camilla would scare me into competing for him. So I opened the door wider. You already chose. He left. By noon, I had canceled the venue. At 12:40, the photographer. At 1:15, the florist. I lost part of the venue deposit and recovered most of the others. Then I called the bank. The wedding account required either account holder to authorize transfers, which meant the $5,600 wasn't technically an unauthorized bank transaction. Daniel's name was on the account. That was my mistake. I closed what I could, moved my remaining personal funds, changed every password, froze my credit, and spent the afternoon checking statements. That was when I found something else. 3 small transfers. 400, 650, 900 all to the same payment app account. C. Reyes. Camila. Over 5 months. I added them, then added the hotel, then the missing $5,600. The total made my stomach turn. This wasn't one reckless weekend, it was a system. And I had been financing part of it without knowing. At 4:22, Camilla texted, I'm sorry. He said the money was his. I stared at the message. Then another arrived. I didn't know about the bracelet until after he sold it. Then. That's why I left the receipt. So that answered one question, but not the biggest one. Why stay with him after discovering he stole from me? I typed exactly that. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Because by then I loved him. I put my phone down. There are sentences that make you angry. That one made me tired. Camilla wasn't innocent. She knew I existed. She had cleaned the apartment where our wedding invitations were stacked on the dining table. She had seen my dress bag hanging in the guest room. She had heard us discuss seating charts. But Daniel had apparently been lying to her too. He told her our relationship was essentially over, that we were only living together because of the lease, that I was controlling the wedding money, that I cared more about appearances than about him. He had created two versions of himself, one for me, one for her. And both versions needed somebody else to pay the bills. 2 days later, I returned home with my mother and changed the locks. Daniel had taken his clothes, laptop, gaming console, and most of his shoes. His side of the closet was empty. On the kitchen counter, he had left his house key. Beside it was a note. "I'm sorry it ended this way. I never wanted to hurt you. I hope someday you understand I had to choose happiness." I read it once, then threw it away. For the next month, I heard almost nothing. A mutual friend told me Daniel had moved into Camilla's apartment. Another said they were really happy. Then I saw the photo. Daniel and Camilla at a restaurant, her head against his shoulder. His caption, "Sometimes losing the wrong life helps you find the right one." I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I blocked him. I expected that to destroy me. It didn't. What destroyed me were smaller things. Canceling the dress alterations, explaining to my aunt why she should cancel her flight, finding a box of wedding favors in the hall closet, removing Daniel as my emergency contact at work, telling my supervisor, Denise, that there would be no honeymoon and I didn't need the 2 weeks off anymore. She looked at me across her desk. "Take 1 week anyway." "I'm fine. Megan, I'm fine." She leaned back. "You've been saying that for 4 years." That sentence followed me home, maybe because it was true. I had spent years making Daniel's instability look stable. When his car payment was late, I covered groceries. When commissions were bad, I paid utilities. When he forgot an anniversary reservation, I made another one and told everyone we changed plans. I thought being a good partner meant making sure nobody saw the cracks. Now the cracks were the only honest part. So I stopped fixing things that weren't mine. I started with the apartment. I could afford it alone, barely. But I didn't want every room reminding me of Daniel. I talked to the landlord about ending the lease early. That conversation changed everything. He told me the duplex next door was becoming available. Smaller, cheaper, newly renovated. I moved 3 weeks later. Same neighborhood, different door. That detail matters. Daniel didn't know I had moved. By the second month, something else happened. I got promoted. Our office manager left unexpectedly, and Denise asked me to take over scheduling and vendor coordination temporarily. Temporary became permanent. The raise wasn't enormous. It didn't need to be. For the first time in years, my paycheck belonged entirely to my life. I rebuilt the $5,600 Daniel had taken faster than I expected. My mother's bracelet was recovered too. The pawn shop still had it. I brought Mom with me when I picked it up. She fastened it around my wrist in the parking lot. "Keep it somewhere safe." I looked at it. I think I finally know how. 3 months passed, then 4. Occasionally, someone would mention Daniel. I stopped asking questions. But information has a way of reaching you when people know the story. His sales numbers had collapsed. Then he lost his job. One mutual friend said he'd been borrowing money. Another said Camilla had stopped working for several clients. Then, near the end of the 5th month, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Megan, this is Camilla. I know you don't owe me anything, but there is something about Daniel you need to know." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, she sent a photograph. It showed a credit card statement. My name was on it. Except I had never opened that credit card. And according to the statement, someone had charged more than $11,000 to it. I zoomed in. The mailing address was my old apartment. The account had been opened 3 weeks before Daniel left me. I called the card company. Then I called the police. And that was when I understood something. Daniel hadn't come into my life 6 months later because his new relationship failed. He was going to come back because everything he had hidden was finally catching up with him. I just didn't know yet how desperate he would become. The Credit card company transferred me to its fraud department. I spent almost 2 hours on the phone. The account had been opened online using my name, social security number, date of birth, and the address Daniel and I shared. Statements were paperless. The email attached to the account wasn't mine, but the phone number was familiar. Daniel's. I wrote everything down. Dates, charges, payment history. The account had been opened 22 days before he left me. The first purchase was small, $60 at a gas station, then $418 at an electronics store, $790 at a furniture store, hotel charges, restaurants, cash advances. By the time Daniel walked out of our kitchen telling me he had chosen happiness, the balance was already over $7,000. After he moved in with Camilla, it kept growing. He had been building his new life on credit opened in my name. The fraud representative froze the account and explained what documentation they needed from me. I filed an identity theft report, contacted the credit bureaus, and followed every instruction they gave me. Then I drove to the police station. I brought copies of everything. The officer who took my report asked the obvious question. Did your former fiancé have access to your personal information? Yes. How much? All of it. 4 years. Tax documents in drawers. Insurance paperwork. My social security number on old employment forms. Copies of my driver's license from apartment applications. I had trusted him enough to build a life with him. That trust had apparently become another financial resource. When I walked back to my car, I sat behind the wheel for a long time. Then I called Camilla. She answered immediately. You saw it? Yes. Her voice sounded different. Not confident. Not defensive. Tired. How did you get the statement? It came to my apartment. Why? Because Daniel changed the mailing address 2 weeks ago. I frowned. Why would he do that? I think he was trying to apply for something else. My grip tightened around the phone. What? A loan. There it was. Another door behind the door. Camilla told me everything, or at least everything she knew. For the first month after Daniel moved in, things had been good. He was attentive, romantic. He cooked dinner, brought flowers, told her leaving me was the hardest decision he had ever made, but the right one. Then the bills started. He asked her to cover more rent because his commissions were delayed. Then his car insurance. Then groceries. Then he borrowed $200. Camilla had already used most of the $5,600 Daniel took from our wedding account to catch up on her own debts. She believed the money belonged to him. By month 3, Daniel had lost his job. He told her it was temporary. By month 4, he was using her credit card. By month 5, they were fighting almost every night. Then she found an email on his laptop about a personal loan application. My name was on it. That's when I started looking, she said. And you found the credit card. Yes. Did you know about it before? No. I believed her. Not because I trusted Camilla, because the timeline made sense. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. He talks about you all the time. I said nothing. When he's angry, you're controlling. When he's scared, you're the only person who ever knew how to fix things. That sentence landed differently. The only person who ever knew how to fix things. Not love him. Not understand him. Fix things. Daniel didn't miss me. He missed the system I had built around him. Camilla continued. Last week he said maybe he made a mistake. About leaving me? Yes. I almost smiled. Not because it felt good, because I finally understood what his regret was worth. It had arrived exactly when the money ran out. I thanked Camilla for sending the statement. Before we hung up, she said, Megan, I know saying sorry doesn't change what I did. No, I really am sorry. I looked through my windshield at people walking across the parking lot. You knew we were engaged. I know. You came into my home every week. I know. You saw the invitations. Her voice cracked. I know. I didn't insult her. I didn't forgive her either. I hope you make better choices next time. Then I ended the call. 2 weeks passed. The fraud investigation moved forward. The account was removed from my responsibility while the company reviewed the documentation. I kept my credit frozen. Daniel texted twice. First, we need to talk. Then, please don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I took screenshots and didn't respond. A week later, Megan, I can explain the account. Screenshot. No response. Then, I was going to pay everything back. Screenshot. No response. That one almost impressed me. Daniel had apparently decided to document his own defense for me. By the beginning of the 6th month, Camilla had thrown him out. I learned that from her, not from gossip. She sent one final message. He doesn't live here anymore. I thought you should know because he keeps saying he'll talk to Megan. I changed my doorbell camera password that evening. Not because I was afraid of Daniel, because I was finally learning that preparation and panic are not the same thing. Then came Tuesday morning. 6:17. The pounding woke me before the doorbell did. 3 hard knocks. Pause. 3 more. I sat up. For one confused second, I thought I was back in the old apartment. Then I remembered. New bedroom, new duplex, new door. The doorbell camera notification appeared on my phone. Daniel. I watched the live feed. He stood on the porch in a gray coat, shoulders hunched against the Cleveland cold. A duffel bag rested beside his feet. He looked thinner, older. Nothing like the man smiling beside Camilla in that restaurant photograph months earlier. He knocked again. Megan. He knew where I lived. That bothered me more than seeing him. I called my mother first and told her what was happening. Then I opened the door with the chain still latched. 2 inches. No more. Daniel stared at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, Megan, please. I have nowhere else to go. There it was. The moment I had imagined in 100 different ways after he left. In some versions, I screamed. In others, I slammed the door. In the worst versions, I let him in. Reality was quieter. How did you get my address? He looked down. Eric told me. Eric was an old mutual friend. I made a mental note to call him later. You need to leave. Please. Just let me explain. You've had 6 months. I messed up. Yes. I know that now. That almost made me laugh. Now. Not when he slept with Camilla. Not when he pawned my bracelet. Not when he took $5,600. Not when he opened credit in my name. Now. When there was nowhere left to sleep. Camilla kicked me out. I know. His eyes lifted. You talked to her? Yes. His expression tightened. What did she tell you? Enough. Megan. She's lying about some of it. Of course. The second woman had stopped being useful, so now she was the problem. I had once occupied that role. I don't care. You should. She knew about the money. Leave. I lost my job. I know. My car is 3 payments behind. That isn't my responsibility. I know, but I just need somewhere to stay for a few days. I'll sleep on the couch. He actually gestured toward my house, as though we were negotiating furniture placement. No. Megan. No. His voice sharpened. 4 years and you can't give me 3 nights? There it was. Not remorse. Entitlement. I looked at him through that 2-inch opening and saw something I should have seen years earlier. Daniel believed history was credit. Every year I loved him was something he could withdraw later. 4 years together meant 3 nights on my couch An engagement meant access to my savings. Trust meant access to my identity. Love, to Daniel, was an account somebody else funded. I gave you 4 years, I said. That's exactly why I'm not giving you 3 more nights. His face went still. Then he started crying. Real tears. I believe that. Daniel was genuinely scared. But somebody's pain can be real without becoming your responsibility. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I made the biggest mistake of my life. You made a series of decisions. I loved her. I know. I thought I did. That's between you and Camilla. I never stopped loving you. That sentence would have destroyed me 6 months earlier. Now it sounded almost insulting. You stole from me. I was desperate. You opened a credit card in my name. His expression changed. There. That was why he had come. Not only because Camilla threw him out. He knew about the investigation. Megan, about that, I filed a police report. The crying stopped. Completely. What? I filed a police report. You called the police on me? You used my identity. I was going to pay it. With what? I had a plan. You didn't have a job. I was figuring things out. You charged more than $11,000. His eyes moved toward the street, then back to me. We can fix this. We. That word again. The same word he used when he wanted me to hire Camilla weekly. The same word he used when discussing wedding bills he wasn't paying. We. Except there was no we anymore. No, Daniel. You need to fix whatever belongs to you. I'm fixing what belongs to me. If you tell them it was a misunderstanding. No. Megan, listen. No. This could ruin my life. I stared at him. And maybe that was the saddest part. He still didn't understand. He thought consequences were something I was doing to him. I didn't open the account, I said. You did. I know. I didn't make those charges. I know. I didn't file false information. His jaw tightened. I know. Then whatever happens next started before this morning. He stepped closer. The chain tightened as I instinctively moved the door. Megan, please. I reached for the door. He put his hand against it. Not violently, but enough. Move your hand. He did. Immediately. I looked directly at him. If you come back here again without permission, I will call the police. Do you understand? He stared at me, then nodded. I closed the door, locked it, and stood in my entryway listening. For maybe 20 seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard him pick up the duffel bag. The doorbell camera showed him walking down the steps. He stopped at the sidewalk and looked back once. Then he left. No dramatic speech, no revenge, no applause. Just a man carrying one bag away from a door that used to open for him automatically. 3 hours later, I went to work. Denise took one look at me. What happened? Daniel showed up. She slowly put down her coffee. And? I didn't let him in. She smiled. Not a huge smile, just enough. Good. The next few months were mostly paperwork. Fraud affidavits, calls, documents, statements. The credit card company eventually concluded that the account was fraudulent and removed the balance from my name. The damage to my credit was corrected after disputes and documentation. The police investigation continued separately. I cooperated. I gave them the messages Daniel had sent, especially the one saying he was going to pay everything back. I didn't celebrate any of it. That surprises people when I tell this story. They expect me to say I enjoyed watching his life collapse. I didn't. I had loved Daniel. There is no satisfying way to discover that someone you loved was willing to use you. Camilla contacted me once more. She had moved to another cleaning company and was staying with her sister while rebuilding her finances. Her message was short. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say it without asking for anything. I read it twice. Then I replied, "Thank you for saying it." That was all. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't always require reconciliation. Sometimes it doesn't even require a conversation. Sometimes it just means you stop carrying the person everywhere you go. 8 months after the wedding that never happened, my mother and I went to the lake. Not for a ceremony, not for some symbolic reinvention. We bought coffee, walked along the water, and complained about the wind. At one point, Mom looked at my wrist. I was wearing her bracelet. "You know," she said, "I thought you'd stop wearing that after everything." "Why?" "Bad memories." I touched the clasp. "No, Daniel doesn't get to own the meaning of this." She smiled. That sentence stayed with me. For months, I thought Daniel had stolen my wedding. Then I thought he had stolen 4 years. Then my money, my trust, my sense of judgment. But people only keep owning those things if you keep assigning their names to them. The bracelet was still my mother's gift. The apartment became somebody else's. Home. The wedding money became my emergency savings. The honeymoon week became the week I finally took off work and visited a friend in Chicago. And the woman Daniel left? She wasn't standing still waiting for him to come back. She had moved one door over, then forward. If you've ever had someone return only after the life they chose stopped working, tell me what you learned from it in the comments. And if this story reminded you that protecting your peace is not cruelty, subscribe and stay with us for the next one. Because the strangest thing about Daniel showing up at my door wasn't that he came back. Some part of me always suspected he might. It was realizing that the moment I once dreamed about, him regretting everything, admitting he made a mistake, asking me to take him back, didn't feel like victory when it finally happened. It felt like confirmation. I had spent years believing love meant being useful, being patient, covering the shortfall, solving the problem, opening the door. Daniel taught me something different. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for someone who keeps creating consequences is stop standing between them and those consequences. 6 months earlier, Daniel walked out of my home carrying a suitcase because he believed another woman could give him a better life. 6 months later, he stood outside my new home carrying another bag because neither woman could give him the one thing he had never learned to provide for himself: stability. He asked me to open the door. I didn't. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't feel guilty about leaving one of Daniel's problems unsolved. I simply locked the door and went on with my life.